Hello students, let us start with biological oxidation. And in order to understand biological oxidation, let us see what is bioenergetics or biochemical thermodynamics. Bioenergetics is the study of energy changes that takes place in living organisms accompanying various biochemical reactions. What are these changes are? These are utilization of energy or transfer of energy. The biological systems are essentially isothermic and they use chemical energy for various living processes. When available resources of energy are depleted, death results. The problems in energy is also seen in malnutrition called as marasmus. Thyroid hormones are related with energy metabolism. They control the rate of release of energy, and hence whenever there are changes with thyroid hormones, it results in disease. And last but not the least is excess storage of energy. Excess storage of energy lead to obesity, and this obesity ultimately lead to diabetes mellitus or cardiovascular diseases. So let us understand the concepts. Delta G, that gives change in free energy. It is the portion of total energy that is available for doing work. It is available for doing work. It is utilizable energy, or it is also called as chemical potential. So what is the first law of thermodynamics? The first law of thermodynamics states that energy of the systems along with its surroundings always remains constant. That means energy can neither be created nor it can be destroyed, but it can be transformed from one form to another. So energy can be transferred from one part of the system to another part of the system, or energy can be transferred from system to the surrounding, or energy can be transferred from surrounding to the system, but total energy of the system will remain constant. Also it states that one form of the energy can be transferred into another form. We are using chemical energy for various reactions, and this chemical energy can be transferred into electrical energy or mechanical energy or other forms of energy. Let us see what is second law of thermodynamics. And second law of thermodynamics states that total entropy of the system must increase if the process is to occur spontaneously. What is entropy then? It is the extent of disorder or randomness of the system. It is extent of disorder or randomness of the system. And this extent of disorder or randomness of the system becomes maximum when equilibrium is approached under the conditions of constant temperature and pressure. What is relationship between this entropy and Gibbs free energy? It can be represented as Gibbs change in free energy is equal to enthalpy minus T, that is absolute temperature, into entropy, randomness. So what is this enthalpy? Enthalpy is change in heat of the reactants. So change in free energy is equal to change in heat of the system minus absolute temperature into change in entropy. Now in biological systems, the heat released is approximates or almost equal to energy released, and hence the same equation can be rewritten as delta G, that is Gibbs free energy, is equal to change in energy minus T, that is absolute temperature, into entropy, that is randomness of the system. Now let us see three situations where this value of delta G is negative. This is free energy and this is time. Let us consider a metabolite. A is considered is converted to B. So metabolite A is placed at a high energy level. It is converted into B, or metabolite placed at low energy level. So this reaction lead to release of energy. This is called as exergonic reaction. What is this called as? Exergonic reaction. And it can be of low magnitude, high magnitude, or great magnitude. When this exergonic reaction or minus delta G is of great magnitude, that means metabolite A is at very high energy level, whereas metabolite B is relatively at low energy level. The reaction will go to completion and it is irreversible. So the reaction is essentially unidirectional reaction. That means once B is formed, it will not be converted into A as such. Okay. So negative G is exergonic reaction, great magnitude, it is unidirectional reaction. Now consider the situation where delta G is positive. That is, see, this metabolite C is converted to metabolite D. Can this reaction occur? No. Without supply of energy, this reaction cannot occur because the metabolite C is placed at lower energy level and metabolite D is placed at higher energy level. So the free energy is needed to be supplied in order to this reaction to take place. And as reaction needs energy, this is called as endergonic reaction. First one is exergonic. Now this one is endergonic reaction. Delta G is positive. Okay. So if the delta G is of great magnitude, then system is stable. Great magnitude means this is of small magnitude, this is of great magnitude. D is at much higher level than C, and hence system is stable. There is no tendency of the reaction to take place. Now third situation where delta G is 0. That means system is at equilibrium and there is no net change. No net change is seen. Changes are there. Reactants are continuously transformed into one form to another, but total number of reactants, total number of reactants and total number of products remain the same, though there is interconversion is taking place continuously and randomness of the system is very high at the equilibrium. Still the net delta G is 0. That means energy change, net energy change will be 0 and system is said to be at equilibrium. Enzyme speeds up the attainment of equilibrium. It never alters the final concentration of the reactants at equilibrium. Endergonic processes proceed by coupling with exergonic reactions. Vital processes such as synthetic reactions, muscular contraction, neuromuscle conduction and active energy, these are endergonic reactions and these proceed with coupling with oxidative processes which are exergonic reactions. What is this coupling or linking? We have to, in order to understand the simple process of coupling in the simplest form, it can be explained like this. One metabolite A is converted to metabolite B. This is exergonic reaction. This is exergonic reaction. Now this reaction is linked with conversion of metabolite C, which is converted to metabolite D, which is endergonic reaction. While conversion of A to B, free energy is released. For conversion of C to D, free energy is required. When we couple these both the reaction, the total reaction will proceed if and only if the heat or free energy is released. So, endergonic processes cannot proceed as such. They need to be coupled with exergonic reaction. So, endergonic reaction are part of coupled exergonic endergonic reaction where net change is exergonic. Net change should be exergonic. There should be release of free energy. Then and then only this reaction occurs. So, this biological oxidation or breakdown of the substances which will release the free energy or exergonic reactions are called as catabolic reactions. Synthetic reactions which causes joining of substances and synthesize a new bigger molecule is called as anabolic reaction. Combining this breakdown, catabolic reaction and synthetic anabolic reactions are termed as metabolism. So, in these metabolic reactions, endergonic, exergonic reactions are coupled with each other and overall reactions are exergonic. Now, this coupling can be of two types. One scenario can be there is an obligatory intermediate, say for example I. So A plus C will synthesize an obligatory intermediate, that is I, which is converted into B plus D. What is the importance of this synthesizing I? It will control the rate of overall process. How? See, if 1 mole of this is the product of anabolic reaction, this is required in the body, and for this anabolic product we are taking help of this oxidative or catabolic process. Okay, so whenever this 1 mole of D is required, 1 mole of A is oxidized. If D is required more, A will be oxidized more. If D is required less, A will be oxidized less, and this is called as control rate of oxidative processes. This way, the oxidation proceeds in a stepwise manner and it prevents body from burning out. One such example of obligatory intermediate is in dehydrogenation, hydrogenation reactions, where we can represent it as a substance is dehydrogenated, then it is taken by a carrier which is hydrogenated. Again, this is taken up by B. Ultimately, A plus AH2 plus B will give rise to A plus BH2. But we require an obligatory intermediate. And this, what is the importance of this obligatory intermediate? It controls the rate of oxidative processes. These type of reactions we will see later in electron transport chain. Second scenario of coupling. This is the first scenario. Obligatory intermediate I is synthesized. Second scenario, A is converted to B. This is exergonic process where high energy compound is generated. This high energy compound is utilized for synthesizing D from metabolite C. In this reaction, this high energy compound is utilized and is converted into low energy compound. Again, this low energy compound is converted into high energy compound in exergonic reaction. This is scenario 2. So, high energy compound is synthesized in exergonic reaction. It is incorporated in synthetic reaction. These are catabolic reactions. We have synthesized a high energy compound. It is incorporated in anabolic reactions. Now, what is the advantage of this synthesizing a high energy compound? Look, this I is obligatory intermediate. It is formed due to combination of A plus C. That means it is structurally related to A plus C. And B, it is also structurally related to B plus D because its products are B plus D when it dissociates. In case of this synthesizing and incorporating high energy group, this intermediate is not structurally related. So, it can act as a transducer of energy from wide range of catabolic reaction. It is synthesizing the wide range of catabolic reactions and it is utilized for equally wide range of anabolic reactions.